May 23, 1977. In 1 minute, an ordinary Dutch morning collapses. 54 train passengers are seized at gunpoint, and 8 miles away, 105 children and their teachers are captured inside a school. This coordinated act marks the longest hijacking in Dutch history. But what could drive a group of young people to force an entire nation to the edge? The answers start with 2 doors locking and end far from where you would expect. At exactly 9:07 a.m., the ordinary rhythm of the Dutch countryside fractures. A train bound for Groningen lurches to an abrupt stop near de Punt. In the same instant, the calm of a small primary school in Bovensmelde is shattered. On the train, passengers are thrown forward as the emergency brake is pulled. 9 young men, armed and determined, move through the carriages with purpose. They shout orders, demanding silence. Some passengers are allowed to leave, but 54 remain. Fear tightens every movement. Windows are papered over. The outside world disappears. 8 miles away, 4 figures step into a classroom filled with the sounds of pencils and whispered lessons. They carry rifles. One teacher tries to stand but is told to sit. Desks are pushed aside. Children, 105 in total, are counted, ushered into corners, told to stay quiet. 5 teachers are kept with them. Some children cry. Others freeze, eyes wide, clutching each other. The school doors are locked from within. The phone is ripped from the wall. News does not travel fast enough for parents. Within minutes, word spreads through Bovensmelde. Mothers sprint through streets, faces drained of color. Fathers abandon work and race toward the school, only to find police forming a barricade. The crowd swells, desperate voices mixing with the static of radios and the shrill of sirens. Some parents call out their children's names, hoping for an answer. Others stand motionless, staring at the building that now holds their world inside. Commuters on the train, stunned and silent, realize that escape is no longer possible. In both places, the message is the same: no one leaves, not until someone listens. The scale of the crisis becomes clear. 2 locations, nearly 200 hostages, and a nation forced into sudden, breathless suspense. The clock begins. 20 days will follow, but in this moment, the only certainty is fear. Inside the stopped train, the world narrows to a few darkened carriages. 54 passengers sit pressed together, surrounded by the sharp scent of sweat and fear. The hijackers move quickly, barking orders in Dutch and Malay. Newspapers and coats are shoved into every window frame, blocking out the morning sun. Light vanishes. The countryside dissolves. Only the dull glow of emergency bulbs remains, casting faces in uneasy shadow. No one is allowed to speak above a whisper. A cough draws a warning. The hijackers pace the aisles, rifles slung across their chests, eyes darting. A woman tries to comfort her child, but the child's sobs only make the silence heavier. An elderly man, hands trembling, asks to use the toilet. He has watched every step of the way. No one moves without permission. No one knows how long this will last. Food and water are taken from bags and passed around in small amounts. The hijackers ration what little there is, counting every sandwich, every bottle. Some hostages close their eyes, willing themselves to disappear. Others stare blankly at the floor, lips moving in silent prayer. A teacher, separated from her class, tries to steady her breath, searching for any sign of hope in the faces around her. On the floor, a young woman clutches her purse, knuckles white. Each time a door slams, she flinches. The sound of boots on metal is constant. The hijackers argue among themselves in low tones, glancing at the hostages, at the covered windows, at each other. The tension is a living thing, thickening the air. Hours pass, measured only by the changing rhythm of footsteps and the slow exhaustion settling into every body. The outside world is gone. The train is now a sealed box, ruled by strangers with guns. For the 54 inside, freedom has vanished in an instant. All that remains is the hope that someone, somewhere, is listening. Max Papalaya was 22 when he boarded the train, the youngest of the group and its quiet leader. Born in the Netherlands to South Moluccan parents who arrived in 1951, Max grew up in temporary camps, surrounded by reminders of a promise the Dutch government never kept. His father's stories of loyalty and betrayal echoed through his childhood, shaping a sense of duty that grew heavier with each year. Max's early life was marked by waiting for a home, for recognition, for justice that never came. By his 20s, frustration had replaced hope. He was not known for violence or crime, but for his calm resolve among Moluccan youth. On the train, Max decided who would be released and who would stay. Witnesses later recalled his composure, the way he seemed almost detached, yet his hands shook when he spoke. He looked more like a student than a militant, but in his mind he was a soldier in a war the world had chosen to ignore. At the primary school, Hansina Uchtolseja moved quietly among the others. One of the few women in the group, Hansina's resolve was shaped by the same history of exile and disappointment. Before the operation, she wrote a farewell letter to her family, apologizing for the pain she might cause. She explained she could not turn away from what she saw as injustice, and hoped her actions would force the world to remember the South Moluccan struggle. Her words, later read aloud in court, carried sorrow and conviction, a daughter's final attempt to be heard. Others in the group shared similar stories, children of soldiers raised on the margins, shaped by a sense of betrayal that ran deeper than any single event. Their choices grew from desperation, not hatred. In the darkness of the train and crowded classrooms, they saw themselves as messengers, not villains, their actions rooted in lives marked by waiting and exclusion. In 1951, 12,500 South Moluccans stepped off ships in Dutch ports, carrying little more than uniforms, family photographs, and the memory of distant islands. They had served as soldiers in the Royal Netherlands East Indies Army, loyal to the Dutch crown through war and revolution. The promise was clear: fight for the Netherlands, and when the fighting ended, your homeland, the South Moluccas, would be free. But when Indonesia claimed independence, the promise vanished. The Dutch recognized the new republic. The South Moluccan dream of a nation was crushed in Jakarta, not The Hague. The soldiers and their families were told the move to the Netherlands would be temporary. They would wait in exile just until a solution could be found. Instead, they were sent to remote camps and barracks, many of them former Nazi transit sites like Westerbork. The buildings were cold, the fences high, the walls stained by the past. Families squeezed into cramped rooms, meals were eaten in mess halls, and the outside world seemed impossibly far away. They were not given Dutch citizenship. They could not work regular jobs. Children learned to speak Dutch in makeshift classrooms, but their parents whispered stories of home and unfinished business. Year after year, the word temporary lost its meaning. Letters arrived from government offices, always with the same message: wait. The camps became villages of waiting, waiting for news, waiting for justice, waiting for a return that never came. Some tried to adapt, planning gardens and organizing church services. Others grew restless, watching as the Netherlands moved on and their cause faded from public view. The sense of betrayal deepened. Elders clung to memories of loyalty and sacrifice, but their children saw only broken promises and locked gates. By the 1970s, a new generation had grown up behind those fences. They inherited the frustration of their parents, but not their patience. The story of exile was no longer just about waiting, it was about being forgotten. For some, hope curdled into anger. The dream of a South Moluccan homeland was no longer a distant goal. It became a reason to act, to demand, to force the world to remember what had been lost. The camps, once built for temporary shelter, had become the birthplace of a new, desperate resolve. Demands arrive in blunt, typed sentences. The hijackers insist on the release of 21 Moluccan prisoners, a fully fueled aircraft at Schiphol, and a promise from the Dutch government to support independence for the Republic of South Maluku. They set a deadline, May 25th at 2 p.m. If their demands are not met, they warn, the consequences will be irreversible. Negotiators relay these messages from the crisis center in The Hague. Each word is measured, each response delayed. The government refuses political concessions, offering only food, blankets, and a direct line for communication. Inside the train, the world contracts to a series of rituals. Hostages are allowed to use the toilet one at a time, always under guard. Meals arrive in small paper bags, counted and distributed with care. Water is rationed, sips at a time. No one knows if the next meal will come or if it will be their last. On the school linoleum floors, children lie side by side, wrapped in coats and sweaters. Teachers try to keep order, inventing games to distract their students, whispering reassurances they barely believe. A teacher quietly writes notes to parents, tucking them into shoes and pockets, hoping someone will find them. The hijackers move through the classroom, sometimes pausing to check on a child who cries, sometimes snapping at the smallest sound. They repeat that they do not want to harm anyone, but their rifles never leave their hands. With each passing hour, the atmosphere thickens. On the train, a woman recites prayers under her breath. A man stares at the wall, lips moving in silent calculation of the days. The hijackers pace, eyes red from lack of sleep, voices cracking when they argue about what comes next. Outside, police and soldiers stand in the rain, radios pressed to their ears, waiting for instructions that never seem to arrive. As the May 25th deadline approaches, tension mounts. News bulletins count down the hours. Reporters speculate about explosives and hidden weapons. In government offices, the crisis team debates every option, knowing that one wrong move could cost dozens of lives. Inside both the train and the school, time stretches and frays. Every routine, every rationed meal, every whispered comfort becomes a way to fend off panic as the world waits for something to break. The deadline passes without bloodshed, but the government's patience is running out. In The Hague, the crisis team gathers around a long table, faces drawn, voices low. Justice Minister Andreas van Acht takes the lead, flanked by Prime Minister Joop den Uyl. Every option is weighed and reweighed. The demands remain impossible. The hostages are still at risk. Each day of stalemate makes the cabinet look more powerless. Outside, headlines grow sharper. Newspapers accuse the government of dithering. Talk radio callers demand action. The public sphere is turning into anger. Inside the train, the atmosphere is brittle. The hijackers, exhausted and isolated, begin to lose faith that anyone is listening. Their threats grow louder. Then the warning becomes real. One hostage is singled out and executed. The news reaches the crisis team within the hour. The details are grim. The killing is meant as a message. The hijackers are prepared to follow through. The cabinet knows what this means. The line has been crossed. Election campaigns are suspended nationwide. No rallies, no speeches, no distractions. All attention is fixed on the crisis room at the Ministry of Justice. Advisors from the military and police file in with thick folders. Intelligence officers present intercepted communications. Community intermediaries, trusted voices from the Moluccan diaspora, are brought in to plead for a peaceful end, but their influence is shrinking by the day. The hijackers are no longer negotiating, they are issuing ultimatums. That night, the crisis team meets again. The atmosphere is different now. No one talks about new proposals or diplomatic channels. The conversation turns to logistics. How many Marines? How much firepower? How quickly the operation can be launched? Risk assessments are read aloud. The numbers are cold. There is no way to guarantee all hostages will survive. The ministers listen in silence. Some stare at their hands, others look out the window searching for another answer. But the choices have narrowed to one. The order is prepared. The military is told to begin final rehearsals. For the hostages, for the government, for the country, time is nearly up. At the Van Ghent Kazerne in Rotterdam, the Dutch Marines worked through the night, rehearsing every detail of the coming assault. Inside a warehouse, they built a replica of the train, corridors cramped, windows blacked out, compartments mapped to match the intelligence gathered from thermal cameras and listening devices. Junior Marines moved in teams, practicing entry drills with live weapons, counting off steps in the dark, memorizing the layout until it felt like muscle memory. Officers walked the lines, reciting risk briefings, one wrong move, and hostages could die. The sound of boots on concrete, the thud of doors kicked in, the barked commands, every action was measured, repeated, stripped of emotion. Each rehearsal ended with a review of what could go wrong, stray bullets, mistaken identities, the chaos of close quarters. The planners drew up risk matrices, calculating survival odds for every car and every minute. Risk was measured in numbers and in silence. In conference rooms, commanders presented the plan to the crisis team in The Hague. The green light came late at night. There would be no more waiting. The order was final. The Marines packed their gear in silence, knowing what was expected of them when dawn arrived. Before dawn on June 11, 1977, the countryside shakes with a sound never heard before. 6 starfighter jets ripped through the sky, barely skimming the rooftops, their engines unleashing a wall of noise so fierce it rattles glass for miles. Inside the stalled train at Punt, the roar is all-consuming. Hostages cover their ears, some scream, others freeze. The hijackers stagger, disoriented, as the world turns to thunder and vibration. In the next instant, the assault begins. Dutch Marines unleash a barrage. 15,000 rounds hammer the carriages, splintering metal, tearing through seats, filling the air with dust and deafening chaos. Explosives punch open doors. Marines pour in, moving car by car, shouting commands, searching for armed figures in the smoke. Hostages drop to the floor, hands over their heads, desperate to survive the confusion. In minutes, it is over. 6 hijackers lie dead. 2 hostages caught in the crossfire will never leave the train. The silence that follows feels heavier than the gunfire. For those who make it out alive, freedom comes at a cost they will carry forever. Today, the scars of 1977 remain visible, not only in Dutch policy but in fractured Moluccan communities still searching for justice and belonging. The government's promise of never again echoes in every modern crisis where dialogue is replaced by force. When history's wounds are left unhealed, desperation finds new forms. For a nation shaped by silence, the question persists: what price are we willing to pay for closure?